Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sportszone. I'm your host, Mercedes Zaragoza, and can you tell what we're going to start off talking about? Yes, it is our beloved Dallas Stars. They are in the Stanley Cup, and last time you saw us, we were going into the Stanley Cup. It was unsure if they would play the Islanders or the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now we know we're 2 games in with the Lightning. We're split, right? So it's going to be a long series and an emotional series. And I have George and Kevin here with me to talk a little bit about the Dallas Stars game last night. George, I'm going to have you start off, right? So I was at the watch party. I have a lot of opinions about it, but I'll just want to pick your brain a little bit. How do you think last night's game went in terms of like how we've seen them play to get to this series? Where do you think this game fell on that scale?
I mean, the Stars have had a roller coaster season. It has been ups and downs. In the beginning of the bubble, especially, they didn't look good, and then they just have gotten super hot during the playoffs. As you know, the Stars are more, it's a defensive team anyways. They're riding Khudobin. That's who they really have got to push through. It's really just been a roller coaster series. As you saw in game 1, you know, the Stars were looking really good, especially in that first period. Second period, they were still looking good. In that third period, though, the Lightning got a 22-2 shot difference on goal, and I think that the Lightning carried that through into Game 2, scoring 3 early goals, especially on those power plays. The other thing is, so I think seeing that, and then the Stars almost coming back with a goal in the second period, a goal in the third period, I think that the Stars having that momentum now, I think they can go into Game 3, and again, it's just going to be a roller coaster. I think this one goes to 7.
All right, Kevin, so I'm going to move it over to you. Same thing, like where does this fall on the scale of where they have been and where they're kind of heading after this game? This game was kind of like a letdown for me. I was expecting to barrel roll and just finish up the series, you know, shut them out. So what are you thinking after last night's game?
Yeah, just like George was saying, it's been an up and down season, and the Stars did start off really well against the Lightning this game. I mean, both teams are really even, both are defensively, like heavy defense, but the Stars just blew it at they had a bunch of penalties, and yeah, you have a really good goal in Anton Khudobin, but he cannot stop every single shot that he faces, and the Stars were just not helping him that game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm afraid to tell you I don't agree with you. That first period was a disaster. They had three scored on Khudobin, and at that point, what do, right? You don't have Ben Bishop, you don't have him there to replace him. Part of me wanted them to take him out, you know, say like, hey man, just rest it up, Game 3, let's go. But personally, just breaking down that first period, bad defense on us, you know, and whenever you play a team like Tampa Bay who plays so different than you know, you look at the Stars, they're a heavy defensive team, they're a heavy bodily team, they're really, really aggressive, and Tampa Bay is just not like that, not in the past, and not until this past game. You know, they're benders, they have intricate puck movement, and it's beautiful. Put them in the middle of the ice, they're fine. Put the Stars in the middle of their ice, it's a little icy there. So I'm going to switch it over to George. George, what do you think was the Stars' biggest downfall? And also, do you think they came back in that second period to kind of battle back?
I definitely think they did. I think the momentum shifted in that second period. That third period, they were really close to a comeback. But I have to disagree with you. I don't think they should have replaced Khudobin. It was really not Khudobin's fault. You have that early penalty plays. You know, the power plays that early, bad penalties there by the Stars. And those 2 first goals, that first one was a lucky shot. The second one, yeah, it was Khudobin's fault. But just being on that power play, you know, there's that early really, really came down. And, you know, he had 27 saves out of 30, so still a really good percentage. I think it was his team not helping him out, especially with those penalties early, and then that third goal was scored about 12 seconds after that second power play was done. I don't think it was really Khudobin's fault. I think he needs some help, and no more stupid penalties in the beginning of the period.
And you know, you're right, I worded that wrong. What I meant was like pull him out, give him some time to recoup before that third game, because you know, you gotta get in the mind of a goalie. You're like, hey, I just let 3 goals on my team. Like I gotta wrap this up, right? And you know, just moving on. So Kevin, what are you thinking for the rest of the series?
I think it's gonna be a really defensive heavy matchup. We really gotta rely on our defensemen and Myro, and Issa Lindell, Jamie Alexiak, Myro Heiskanen, and John Klingberg. So we need to really rely on them, hit the Lightning really hard, block their shots, get many assists, and just show them we're the better defensive team.
I also think that it was a morale booster to keep Khudobin in. Seeing that, that he has that 12, you have the 2 periods going in with no scoring, I think it really helped his morale.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. When we come back, we're going to be talking a little bit of UNT and SMU football. Stay with us. Welcome back to Sportszone. I have David and Jocelyn here to talk about some SMU and UNT football, which we didn't really go into very excited about, and it ended up being as bad as we thought it was going to be. So David, I'm going to start off with you. Let's talk a little bit about the quarterback dilemma, right? We're still in between 2 quarterbacks, Jason Bean and Austin Audie. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I mean, at the beginning of the week, we all were pretty confident that we had a 2-quarterback system. We're going to have to learn how to roll with it and just kind of develop this going forward. At the end of this week, I think we're all scrambling, saying we need to get rid of it. It's not going to work. And I'm going to tend to agree with that. But again, at the beginning of this week, everyone was pretty confident we had a chance to beat SMU. They just went out there and struggled against Texas State. We were pretty confident against our last opponent. And then we play them, and we just looked awful from Jump Street. It was terrible. So, our quarterback situation is terrible, but this whole team right now has a lot of question marks going forward.
All right, Jocelyn, David did say that they looked awful from the get-go, right? So do you think that they're playing scared going into this game with SMU?
I think they did I guess you could say the first quarter. I mean, we have to think about it. They're going in, they're not sure who's going to be their starting quarterbacks. It's between Ani and Bean. And then with the offense struggle as well as defense played a horrible game. I mean, like I've always said, defense wins the game. So it's just of a matter of once they get their lead intact, I think it could get better as a team and as a unit.
And let's talk a little bit more in depth about the quarterbacks. I was at the game. I thought it was going to kind of be like SMU against Texas State, right? So I had a little bit of hope because Texas State stayed with SMU. And we are almost to that point. Ani throws an interception into the end zone. So where do you think the game went from there? Do you think, it was just kind of downhill from there? Because the ending score was 35-65. The fact that they even let us score that much kind of shows that they put in their second or third strings. But David, just what do you think going forward?
Well, I'm going to be honest. Going forward, like I said, there's a lot of questions about this team. One, what do we do about these quarterbacks? Do we go ahead and trust Austin and Ani to go forward? Right now, if you look at both of their stats, Bean and Ani have similar stats from those first two games. They have a pick apiece. They're both throwing about 55, 56% completion percentage. So, I mean, it's not like anyone is leading that race, so it makes it a little bit more difficult for the coaching staff. But then you have a lot of issues with the coaching staff. There needs to be some ingenuity with the offense. If the defense is going to struggle like this, you need to find a way to keep the ball in the offense's hand for as long as possible, and that's just not happening.
No, I 100% agree with you, and I agree with you, Jocelyn, that defense wins games, and UNT does not have a very strong defense. They haven't for a long time. They also don't have a very strong O-line, which is why Mason Fine was hurt for a lot of his career with UNT. So let's move on to the future. Let's not stay in the past of this terrible game. Were there any slivers of greatness that you saw moving on into, the rest of our season?
Even though our defense lacked a lot, I think one of the key players that we can look at defensively was Caleb Howell. I mean, he had a career start as a linebacker. He actually took over two starting linebackers that was injured, Katie Davis and Tyreek Davis. So it kind of helped. So, I mean, he went out there, he did what he could. He's only one person. But, I mean, we can't sit here and think that, not everybody had a great game. I guess we can't say Ani also had a great game. It's until that interception. But defensively, I think Howard did what he was supposed to do, and that was to cover what he could. I mean, even he said himself that there was a lot of things that they missed as far as himself, missing tackles, missing filling in the gaps. So we'll have to see going forward what the defense can and the offense can do moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, filling in the gaps is one thing. You can drive a truck through there. So, David, I'm going to switch it over to you. Any slivers of hope moving on into the rest of our season? The regular season is upon us, right? Southern Miss, I believe, is next.
Well, we got Houston next.
We have Houston next, yes, and then Southern Miss is our next home game. So, what do you see going into Houston?
Yeah, I'm going to be less optimistic here. There's a few players who had great games, good games. But going forward, Houston, in their first game to start the season, they're going to be tough. They were tough last season. They're going to be even tougher this season. They're rested. They got fresh legs. And they got an offense that, I mean, they do what they have as far as they utilize their players to the best of their ability. That's something that we have not been able to do. So going forward, it's going to be a really tough outlook. And I'm hoping we can do something going forward. But if not, there's going to have to be some discussions about coaching decisions.
Well, I mean, you're 100% right about Houston, where you said that they take their players, they're like, hey, you're good at this, we're going to stick you right there, and we're going to keep you right there for as long as time that you're with us, because UNT is notorious for switching players around, so it's not consistent, just like the double quarterback situation. So, Jocelyn, I'm going to finish up with you. What are you thinking this Houston game going in? You think it's going to be a win, loss? What are you thinking?
I think with coming off of losing to SMU, I think there's a lot of decision making. There's a lot of talk as far as quarterback decisions, what should be made offensively and defensively. And I think with going into Houston with a team, like I can agree with David, is that how they utilize their players. I think that's something that UNT should take into consideration. And maybe we might have a better momentum going in and not crashing like in the first quarter, kind of like the Cowboys did. But, if we can sit there and work it together, and I guess you could say it's mostly decision making when it comes to coaching, then we can probably put up a good run against Houston. But if not, and if we're going to continue playing the way we did against SMU, I think we're definitely going to lose, because U of H is really powerful. So.
All right, thank you guys. We're going to come back in a little bit to talk some NBA. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. It's time to talk a little bit of NBA with Zach and Brandon. So Zach, I'm going to start off with you. It's LA, Denver, Miami, Boston. So these games are pretty exciting, right? So one is going to look like more of a fight than the other. So let's start off with LA against Denver. It's 2-0 on LA's side, right? So break down those games for me. What's been going on?
Anthony Davis has just been dominant. Like, there's no way to get around that fact. Anthony Davis has looked like the best player left in the bubble. And I mean, Jokic, I love what Jokic is doing. I think he might be the best center in the NBA right now, but he's not containing Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis has dominated him, and I mean, he's the best player on the Lakers, I think, but still, there's LeBron. Like, LeBron is arguably one of the greatest players of all time, and he's not even the best player on his team right now. Like, that is just insane, and I think Denver, they came back from 3-1 in 2 series, but they're not playing LeBron, and so I think Lakers are gonna take this one pretty easily.
I'm sorry, I couldn't help but, hit myself in the face with my paper when you said that LeBron was one of the best players. I'm such a LeBron hater. All right, so breaking it down, it's game 1 was 126-114, obviously LA side. Game 2, though, 105-103. That's where you said Anthony Davis hit a buzzer beat. He scored the last 10 points for the Lakers and then hit a buzzer beater 3-pointer. So Brandon, let's switch it over to you. Anthony Davis, what's going on in your brain about it? Like, Giannis won the MVP. Do you think it should have been AD?
I really can't say for certain whether Anthony Davis should have won it over Giannis, but I can say that Anthony Davis is by far one of the most clutch players in the NBA right now, and he's definitely going to be a big factor for the Lakers going forward, and I wouldn't be surprised if he carries them to the championship.
So what are the two of you thinking for this series? Do you think LA is going to blow it out? You think Denver's going to come back, maybe get a couple of games on LA? Because honestly, there's not a doubt in my mind that LA is going to win it and go to the finals, but I think the question that's on my mind is if Denver is actually going to put up a fight. So what are you guys thinking?
I think it's going to be a gentleman's sweep. I think the Lakers win in 5. I think Jokic or Murray has a big game in game 3 or 4. They win 1 game, and that's all I'm giving Denver.
Brandon, what are you thinking?
I'm pretty much along the same lines. I think Denver might be able to come up with 1 win, but I think the Lakers are going to win it in game 5 and go on to the championship for sure.
All right, what about Miami and Boston, right? Miami's up 2-1 on Boston. What's been going on there?
I think, with Boston versus Miami, they're 2 teams I don't know people necessarily thought were going to go to the Eastern Conference Finals, but both of them are just so well suited to play each other. I mean, you got Tatum, you got Brown, you got Marcus Smart has looked amazing this series. What he did to Goran Dragic in game 3, phenomenal. You got Kemba Walker, Gordon Hayward, who's coming off the bench, and on Miami's side, Bam, Jimmy, Duncan Robinson. These players, this is a good series. But I mean, I think Miami's going to pull it out. I think Miami has a lot of dog in them. They got arguably the biggest alpha in the NBA with Jimmy Butler and players who are going to play hard to the final possession. And so I think Miami's going to come out with this in the very end.
All right, Brandon, what are you thinking? You agree with him? You disagree?
I have to disagree. I think it's going to be really close, and I really wouldn't be surprised at all if this went to 7 games. But I think the Celtics are going to narrowly get this victory. I mean, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. I mean, overall, both rosters are really close, but I think the Celtics have a little bit of a more complete team, and I think they're going to be going on to the championship this season.
I completely disagree with you there. I think Miami is the much more complete team. I mean, from top to bottom, I think Miami's more complete. Boston may have more star power, but these players have not proven themselves in the big moment in the NBA. Jason Tatum is in his 3rd year, Jaylen Brown 4th, something along those lines. Kemba Walker has never made it this far in the playoffs. I don't think he's ever made it past the 1st round. In Miami, they've got Jimmy Butler, who will not lose a game. Jimmy Butler will do whatever it takes not to lose a game. And these guys from top to bottom, they're matched up way better with the Celtics. And I think they will it'll be a close series, but Miami is going to win it. No doubt in my mind.
All right, gentlemen, I think we could say that we could stay here and talk about this for a while, but we need to go to break because we have the Cowboys coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back, and it's time to talk some Dallas Cowboys football. I have with me Courtney and Sebastian to talk about this past game against the Falcons, which was, least to say, a roller coaster, right? So, Courtney, let's start off with you. Let's talk about just the first half. What was going on in that first half? It was a disaster.
Yeah, honestly, I think we're all still trying to figure out how the Cowboys even came out with the W on this game. Going into the game, they had significant injuries, specifically with the left tackle, the right tackle, and those were like major concerns for them. So I think maybe the Cowboys were too much in their head going into the game, which caused them maybe all of these fumbles, 3 significant fumbles from Dak, Zeke, and the tight end. I have no idea. I have no words. I have no idea what happened or what was going on in their heads.
Nah, I mean, I agree with you. Fumble after, and just in the first quarter, that's insane to have that many mess ups, and it resulted to them getting scored on and then not scoring until the end of the first quarter, first half. And so, Sebastian, let's, on a more positive note, how did they come out of that halftime? Like, kind of, that third quarter was a little better, you have to admit.
Mm-hmm. I do believe that one thing that they really improved on in the second half was that they gave Dak more time in the pocket and gave him more protection going in, because the reason why they had those fumbles in the beginning was because the offensive line was getting pushed too quickly. Deion Jones came in for the sack and stripped the ball away. So going into the third quarter, that is when they decided, to give him more protection, do some misdirection. That's what really let Dak Prescott, thrive. And he started running for touchdowns. He started being mobile, doing rollouts, and that's really what happened in the second half.
Personally, I agree with you. I think in the second half, Dak seemed to thrive, but maybe it was because he started caring. But that's just me. So let's talk about the onside kick. I was watching this game, and I saw the onside kick. And it was said that the kicker hadn't made he's only made like 3 successful onside kicks in his whole career. So I'm like, oh, okay, so this game's over. But I mean, it was successful, but why didn't the Falcons jump on it? I mean, it was clear from the get-go. So you had 4 guys boxing out, like trying to jump on it, and then before you know it, just blows my mind. Courtney, yeah, one of y'all just jump in.
It was really just a mental lapse, The Falcons, I really do believe it was just coaching. You have to know what you have to do in a situation. You can't just let the ball roll, watch it for 10 yards. It's your ball for 10 yards. You could touch it before that. The Cowboys can't. Once it goes past 10 yards, it's their ball. That's what happened. The Falcons, you have to pick it up. That is your ball. That is your win.
What Sebastian said, the Falcons special teams coach said that the players did know what the rule was. I say they didn't. I say they didn't know what they were doing. The pressure was on them, and there's really no excuse for them to not pick up that ball. And I think it honestly shows that they don't practice this at all in practice, and the realistic of it at all. But honestly, I think there's like 6% chance or below for onside kicks recoveries to be successful. So that happened for the Cowboys to come up with this ball. I think it says a lot about the Falcons more than it does about the Cowboys.
No, yeah, there was definitely a unicorn in AT&T Stadium. Like, that was something, like you said, you don't see every day. So, I mean, you could argue that was good coaching on Mike McCarthy's, side, deciding to do the onside kick. I mean, and that's where people just hate on Mike McCarthy, and they're like, he's too risky. He doesn't take the field goal, something like that. But I mean, let's finish up with talking a little bit about McCarthy, right? So Sebastian, do you think that this is going to show good on his coaching going forward?
I do think it'll look better on just giving his players motivation. They were down by so much, just to rejuvenate the team at halftime. So I really do think that's what happened at halftime.
Courtney, real quick, they're going forward. What are you looking at?
I'm for it. I'm for the risk. Season after season, we talk about conservativeness with Jason Garrett and Kellen Moore. I'm with it. Take the risk. What do you have to lose?
All right. Well, thank you for joining us on Sportszone. Catch us live every Tuesday at 4 on Charter 192 and Frontier 46 and streaming on ntTV Sports YouTube page and the North Texas Television Facebook page. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at ntTV_sports for more.